Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. The Derek Chauvin trial comes to a close today as the defense and prosecution make their closing arguments. Cities are now preparing for potential riots afterwards. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is vowing to take action against Congresswoman Maxine Waters. This after Waters told anti-police protesters in Minnesota to get more confrontational if former police officer Derek Chauvin is acquitted. 2 unaccompanied migrant children are rescued from the Rio Grande. The young children were attempting to cross the river alone into the U.S. We take a closer look at one of Border Patrol's busiest sectors. That's as the White House walks back one of Biden's recent comments where he called the border surge a crisis. Vaccine eligibility limits are lifted. Anyone over the age of 16 can now line up to get a vaccine, but only Moderna's and Pfizer's are available for now. And Biden met with a bipartisan group today to negotiate on infrastructure. Coming to a consensus gets tougher as Republicans call for shrinking the package and progressives call to expand it. President Biden today met with a bipartisan group of 10 Congress members to continue negotiation on the infrastructure bill. It's the second bipartisan talk Biden's hosted since announcing his ambitious plan. But as Republicans call for a reduced plan, those on the far left in Biden's party are pushing to expand social welfare parts of the plan. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has more.
Biden, alongside Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, spoke with 4 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 1 independent on Monday.
Number one, what should be included in the package. Obviously, I put a lot in the package. I think it all should be included. And how to pay for it.
Republicans are resistant to including things like paid family leave, increasing child care, and hundreds of billions dedicated to affordable housing projects.
And then you add all the other stuff they have tried to consider into the definition of infrastructure. It is a massive expansion of the government, financed on the backs of the American taxpayers with taxes that will hurt the economy.
Senator Thune joined Biden in the first bipartisan negotiation talk last week. He argues the plan puts more funding towards electric cars than it does roads, bridges, waterways, and airports combined. It's unclear just yet if they've made any negotiation breakthroughs after Monday's meeting. None of the Congress members stuck around to answer questions after it was over. Republicans will outline an infrastructure plan of their own. West Virginia Senator Shelley Capito leading the push to slash the package by more than a half, proposing a bill between $600 billion and $800 billion. While Republicans are working on a bill to shrink the package, the far left wing of Biden's party introduced a bill to expand his plan.
It's just not enough.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and other New York Democrats say Biden's $40 billion for public housing in the plan isn't enough, and they want to double it. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders just unveiled the Green New Deal for Public Housing Act. It would spend $100 billion over the next decade on housing projects. This complicates the talks on infrastructure, adding other factors for Congress to navigate an agreement. Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Democrats are considering splitting Biden's infrastructure plan into 2 smaller bills. One would target traditional infrastructure, and the other would include policies that Republicans have resisted, including social welfare projects. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi supports this approach and says she wants both bills to pass through the House by August. And the autopsy results are in for the U.S. Capitol police officer who died after the January 6th Capitol breach. According to the Washington, D.C. Medical Examiner's Office, Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick suffered from 2 strokes and died of natural causes. Sicknick was on duty when the Capitol was breached on January 6th, and reports implied that an incident with 2 protesters may have caused his death. The results from the autopsy pose a challenge for prosecutors in the case, making it difficult for them to charge the 2 men with murder. However, it was noted that the events on the 6th may have contributed to the strokes. And the trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin has concluded, with both sides wrapping up their arguments today. Now it's up to the jury to deliberate and come to a decision. NTD's Christina Kim gives us key moments from the closing arguments.
The prosecution said Chauvin's actions weren't policing, but murder.
It's exactly what you saw with your eyes. It's exactly what you knew. It's what you felt in your gut. It's what you now know in your heart.
Slisher said Chauvin showed indifference to Floyd's pleas for help.
George Floyd's final words on May 25, 2020 were, "Please, I can't breathe." And he said those words to Mr. Officer. He said those words to the defendant.
Derek Chauvin is being charged with second-degree and third-degree murder, as well as second-degree manslaughter. If convicted, he faces up to 25 years in prison for the harshest crime. The defense presented their closing arguments for over 2.5 hours. Attorney Eric Nelson reminded the jury that it's up to the prosecution to prove that Chauvin is guilty beyond reasonable doubt.
The state has failed to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And therefore, Mr. Chauvin should be found not guilty of all counts.
Nelson said it was nonsense to argue that Floyd's heart disease and drug use didn't play any role in his death. The prosecution argued that Floyd's cause of death was a lack of oxygen. And he said the prosecution focused on the 9 minutes and 29 seconds of the infamous body cam footage, but that doesn't tell the whole story.
This was an authorized use of force, as unattractive as it may be. And this is reasonable doubt.
Nelson points to the fact that Floyd was acting erratically and resisting arrest. The jury will deliberate and come to a conclusion on this issue. They can choose to convict Chauvin on all, some, or none of these charges. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Vandals seem to have retaliated against one of the defense's expert witnesses in the Chauvin trial, but they made a huge mistake. The house they vandalized doesn't belong to him anymore. Around 3 in the morning on Saturday, a group of people dressed in all black gathered at the former home of retired Officer Barry Broad, who served as a witness in the Chauvin trial. The Santa Rosa police say it seems these vandals tried to target Broad for his testimony in the trial. They found a decapitated pig's head near the front of the porch and what appeared to be animal's blood smeared over the front of the house. The cleanup cost over $400, and the vandals ran away as witnesses called the police. About 45 minutes later, a statue in the front of Santa Rosa Plaza Mall was vandalized with a similar substance. Witnesses described the group in a similar way to the group who vandalized the home. We will soon have a verdict in the Chauvin trial. Minneapolis and cities across the U.S. are increasing security precautions to prepare for potential unrest.
Fences, razor wire, and concrete barricade are installed at police precincts in downtown Minneapolis. National Guard troops have been deployed. With jury deliberations in Derek Chauvin's trial this week, Minneapolis and other U.S. cities are preparing for further protests and riots. In the first 3 days of last week, about 140 Minneapolis businesses were damaged. Starting this Wednesday, Minneapolis public schools will move to remote learning as a precaution. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki didn't say whether there are preparations regarding the use of the National Guard. In the nation's capital, the D.C. government put in a request to the National Guard over a week ago.
We have a request into the Guard. Chief Conte has also put our police force on 12-hour shifts.
The Army says it is preparing to approve the request, and the final numbers could be a couple of hundred forces. Lin, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
Criticism pours in over Congresswoman Maxine Waters' controversial remarks at the Minnesota protests over the weekend. The House Minority Leader says he will take action against Waters for inciting violence. And he's not the only one. NTD's Allison Lee has the latest.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said on Sunday that he will take action against Democrat Congresswoman Maxine Waters this week if House Speaker Nancy Pelosi does not. He says he believes Waters is inciting violence with what he calls dangerous rhetoric. On Saturday night, Waters joined anti-police protesters in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota.
We have to let people know that we're not going to be satisfied unless we get justice in these cases. And so I just could not sleep, I could not rest, I could not be satisfied without coming here.
Her response to a reporter's question is circulating widely on social media. A reporter asked her, what should protesters do if former police officer Derek Chauvin is acquitted?
Well, we got to stay on the street. and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
Waters and Pelosi's offices have yet to comment on the remarks. Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said on Sunday that she will soon introduce a resolution to expel Waters from Congress. She also started a petition for it. Greene claims Waters' remarks led to a drive-by shooting in Minnesota against law enforcement on Sunday morning. 2 Minnesota National Guard members suffered minor injuries from it. Republican Senator Ted Cruz also reacted to Waters' remarks, saying, "Democrats actively inciting riots and violence, they want to tear us apart." Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert says, "Why is Maxine Waters traveling to a different state trying to incite a riot?" And that Maxine Waters would already be expelled if she was a Republican. This is not the first time Waters has come under fire for controversial remarks. Back in 2018, she told protesters at a rally that if you see anybody from the Trump cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd, and you push back on them, and you tell them they're not welcome anymore anywhere. Allison Lee, NTD News.
The judge on the Chauvin trial said it was abhorrent that elected officials are discussing this case in a way that's disrespectful to the rule of law. He said he wouldn't rule out a mistrial because he's ordered the jury not to watch the news, but Congresswoman Waters' comment may have given the defense something on appeal that may result in this whole trial being overturned. And the Supreme Court rejects another lawsuit related to the 2020 presidential election. The plaintiffs argue that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court did not have the authority to change election laws. The lawsuit was filed prior to the November 3rd election after the Pennsylvania High Court ordered officials to count mail-in ballots received up to 3 days after Election Day. The changes were said to be in response to the CCP virus pandemic and warnings given by the U.S. Postal Service over its ability to deliver the ballots on time. The case argued that the Constitution gives the state's legislature the final word on election laws, but the U.S. Supreme Court dismissed the case. The Supreme Court refuses to hear a case over the ban of firearms by nonviolent felons. Lawyers argued that the current law is in violation of the Constitution. The law currently under dispute prohibits the possession of guns by people convicted of crimes punishable by more than 1 year in prison. The appeals of 3 nonviolent felons, according to CBS, were brought to the Supreme Court. Lawyers argued that a lifelong ban to possess firearms for nonviolent felons is a violation of the Constitution, but the Supreme Court dismissed the case. The Supreme Court has not made a major decision on the Second Amendment since 2010. And as of today, all adults in the United States are eligible for the vaccine. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story and new data on blood clots related to 3 vaccine brands.
The White House says everyone 16 and up can now get vaccinated against COVID-19. The FDA hasn't allowed anyone younger than that to get a shot of either the 3 American vaccines. Senior advisor Andy Slavitt and his team told skeptics of the vaccine to look at the data, encouraging them to get a shot.
If you are not one of the 130 million American adults who've been vaccinated, today is a great day for you. It's never been easier. So please join that group of people who have done what Dr. Fauci has said, done their homework.
The CDC says over half of all adults in the U.S. have gotten at least 1 dose. At the moment, you can only get either the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. Johnson & Johnson's still on pause. And it's expected to stay on pause until at least Friday when the CDC and FDA review it. Here's Dr. Fauci.
I do think we will get it back in some manner or form. But what I'm sure, I hope, that we don't see anything extended beyond Friday. We need to get Friday some decision one way or the other.
Now, they put the J&J vaccine on pause over 6 cases of low blood platelet levels in combination with rare types of blood clots called cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, which we'll call CVST. A new study from Oxford University, a European report, found that people infected with COVID-19 were 8 to 10 times more likely to develop these rare blood clots than the vaccinated. They looked at vaccines from Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, a company the university worked with to develop their vaccine. They found 1 case of CVST associated with the Pfizer vaccine and 20 in the infected but unvaccinated group. But they didn't say if that 1 case of CVST was associated with low blood platelet levels, which the CDC and FDA say was partly why they called for the J&J pause. Steph, back to you.
Thanks, Miguel. And 2 young migrant children have been rescued from the Rio Grande by Border Patrol agents in the Del Rio border sector. It's the 2nd busiest border sector, and it lacks manpower and resources. The children's story and more on what these border agents encounter every day as the influx continues.
This tragic scene is all too common in the Del Rio border sector. Unaccompanied children are rescued as they make their journey to the U.S. These 2 Honduran children were rescued by Border Patrol agents Thursday. The sector's chief patrol agent, Austin Scarrow, posted the video online and said, "No matter the circumstances that brought them there alone, scenes like these are heartbreaking. I could not be prouder of our agents and the life-saving work they are doing every single day." According to Scarrow, the number of family unit apprehensions in the sector is up over 150% this fiscal year from last, and single adult apprehensions are up 400%. Apprehensions are up 330% altogether. There's also been a 236% increase in criminal apprehensions. The chief has said the Del Rio sector doesn't have enough manpower to deal with the surge, and while agents are occupied, large numbers of illegal immigrants evade capture, many of them criminals. Here's a closer look at what the sector's border agents have been dealing with over the last couple of weeks. On Sunday morning, this group of 112 illegal immigrants were captured, and this group of 167 on Friday. A convicted murderer from Honduras was arrested while trying to illegally enter the U.S. He was deported after serving his sentence in the U.S., only to try and enter the country again. An illegal immigrant wanted by the Mexican government for homicide has been arrested. 3 migrants trapped inside padlocked toolboxes were discovered on the back of a truck attempting to cross into the U.S. Advanced technology allowed agents to make the discovery. 20 migrants, including 2 minors aged 10 and 15, were found trapped under wooden trailer boards at border checkpoints. Border Patrol said with temperatures on the rise, smuggling attempts like this have a high potential to turn deadly. As of April 12th, Del Rio sector agents had conducted over 600 rescues during this fiscal year, including multiple medical emergencies. A migrant family of 3 struggling in swift water and a group of 20 stranded on a small island were carefully brought to safety. These 2 children who had been abandoned near the border were found walking alone along the Rio Grande. They didn't have any food or water with them, only papers with contact information for relatives in the U.S. and a few items of clothing. Chief Scarrow says his Border Patrol agents are facing cases like these every day now.
The White House is walking back President Biden's comments after he called the situation at the border a crisis on Saturday. The Biden administration has long made great efforts to avoid this terminology. Now the White House is making clear there's no change in position. And it says Biden was actually referring to the situation in migrants' countries of origin.
The president does not feel that children coming to our border seeking refuge from violence, economic hardships, and other dire circumstances is a crisis. He does feel that the crisis in Central America, the dire circumstances that many are fleeing from, that is a situation we need to spend our time, our effort on. And
Biden made the comment on Saturday while he was talking about his administration's decision to raise the refugee cap. This is not the first time the White House has backtracked after referring to the border situation as a crisis. Psaki herself slipped up and called the situation a crisis in March after consistently using the term challenge instead. The U.S. intelligence community now recognizes the Chinese regime as the top threat to our national security. On Monday, former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe shared how he thinks the U.S. should strengthen its national intelligence to meet the challenge.
Unfortunately, what worries me most about China now is that they've got a lot of momentum. They didn't just become our #1 adversary overnight. We should have been talking about China, I think, more honestly, more candidly.
During an event on Monday, John Ratcliffe discussed the recently released annual threat assessment by the U.S. Intelligence Committee and shared his view on the China challenges in the fields of military, economy, and technology.
What worries me most is on the technological front. China sees, as do all of our competitors, that is more of an equalizer and that the other two are more dependent on that.
Ratcliffe is one who added the U.S. Space Force as a new part of the intelligence community. He believes that the U.S. does not have a close competitor in that important field and needs to maintain their position as the best in the world. He also pointed out that the U.S. needs to invest more in getting the right people and best technology and strengthen its capabilities in the cyber arena. Recent cases, such as the attack on SolarWinds, shows the vulnerability of the U.S.'s cyber defenses.
The NSA and the CIA are precluded from a domestic standpoint of using these authorities, and we trust DHS and the FBI to be the first line of defense with regard to some of these events that I've talked about, and the capability just isn't there.
He also emphasized the importance of information sharing among U.S. intelligence community to strengthen its overall capabilities.
It's Patriots Day, and Massachusetts residents are commemorating the start of the American Revolutionary War in red, white, and blue. And people can expect to eat more strawberries this year as California forecasts a bumper crop. That and more on NTD News. Today is Patriots Day, commemorating the first battles of the American Revolutionary War in 1775. Our reporter went out to talk to the people who still celebrate it at the historic site.
Over 100 Massachusetts residents gathered in Lexington, famous for its Battle Green, where the first shot of the American Revolutionary War was fired. Celebrating Patriots Day with their families and friends, the air is filled with music and patriotic colors. Attendees talked about the Constitution, freedom, and what it means to be an American.
I'm proud to be American, and I think every patriot here feels the same way, and that's why there's such a good turnout.
My understanding of patriotism is the Constitution of the United States and law and order, which this country was built upon, and so we value that. We also believe in God, and God bless America.
They spoke out about the extended lockdowns and how much control the government is having on their lives.
Stand up and stop saying enough with the lockdowns, enough with all of the businesses being closed and having only a limited number of people allowed in, enough with the mask mandates. The children need to be back in the schools. We need to be free.
They see such actions to be signs of socialism and communism.
We have to come together. You all have seen the rise of socialism and communism here in America, the lack of free speech, and that's why we're here. All those soldiers who lost their lives in all the wars in the past, it wasn't in vain. They did it so you can have your freedom.
Read the Constitution, practice everything that you can. Why you still can? Because in communist country, they teach us not to think politics, not to discuss politics, and most important thing is do not practice politics.
We the people, which is what this country is based upon and our foundation, we need to stick together. We need to absolutely chant our values of freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Locals intend to keep the annual tradition with activities to commemorate and preserve the patriotic spirit.
6 people are hospitalized after a car crash in New York City. One was standing on the sidewalk when the crash happened. NTD's Arian Pazdar has the story from Harlem.
You wouldn't expect to get run over by a car while you're on the sidewalk or inside a grocery store. But that's exactly what happened on Sunday at this intersection right here in Upper Manhattan. An SUV crashed into this deli behind me after it collided with another car. Multiple ambulances were seen at the intersection after the crash. CBS first reported that 2 SUVs crashed into each other. The gray one then crashed into the deli, injuring a pedestrian. The white SUV and the people inside of it also suffered serious damage and injuries. Footage shows the inside of the deli with the SUV at the storefront and firefighters trying to resolve the situation. A day later, on Monday, workers were still cleaning leftover rubble from the crash. In total, 6 people had to be taken to the hospital. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
New York City continues its fight against hate crimes. Today, the NYPD announced the creation of a new civilian panel. NTD's Arian Pasdar has that story.
The panel consists of 5 civilian leaders from different ethnic backgrounds like the Jewish and Chinese community.
To my left, Devorah Haberstam, Mr. Tang, Mr. Fred Tang.
Their job is to review incidents of hate crime and determine whether the attack was biased in terms of race, religion, disability, or more.
There is absolutely no place for hate in New York City.
If the civilian panel decides that a hate crime was biased, they can suggest that the Hate Crime Task Force investigates the case. But the panel doesn't decide who investigates.
Ultimately, the Chief of Department's office will make the final determination of who will be the lead investigative unit.
Around 130 incidents of hate crime took place in New York City in the past year. Half of those are Asian hate crime attacks. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
California is predicting a larger crop of strawberries this year as demand for the fruit increases. NTD's Eileen Ang hears more from a strawberry farmer.
To keep up with an increased demand for strawberries, farmers planted more strawberries last fall and forecast a larger crop this year. According to a report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, California produces about 90% of the nation's strawberries year-round. The majority are harvested between March and October. The demand for strawberries increased last year when the pandemic started and remained high.
We believe that is due to consumers are looking for healthy foods or putting more healthy foods in their diets. And they're also looking for foods that can boost their immunity. And strawberries, as it turns out, are high in vitamin C. And a serving of strawberries has as much vitamin C as an orange.
Most of California's strawberries are grown along the coast, from Ventura to Santa Cruz. Harvest season varies by region. Here at Berry Island Farms in Gilroy, the strawberries are ripening. The farm will be open to the public for you-pick soon, on a first-come, first-served basis. Ronald Walton has been farming here for 7 years. He grows blackberries, tomatoes, cabbages, carrots, and more. His main focus is on strawberries.
We were able to open up, and we had a very busy season last year because, like I said, people with children, they love to come out on a Saturday morning and pick their own strawberries, pick their own tomatoes. I'll be guiding them around on the farm so they learn about farming.
He only grows the Monterey variety. It is very sweet and has a shorter shelf life. But Walton is not concerned about that because he can offer the berries directly to local restaurants, you-pick, and farmers markets. His strawberry season starts from April and can go all the way to Thanksgiving in November. He expects a big crowd this year too and gives advice on how to pick strawberries.
Always use 2 hands, hold the stem and then kind of twist off the berry. Don't pull the berries because you'll pull the plant out of the ground, especially with children. That is important. And my biggest advice is do the taste testing because you want to do the quality control right here in the field.
His strawberries are certified organic, and he does not use pesticides. Welton says he works in harmony with nature for mutual benefit. Turkeys roam around to eat snails and other bugs and leave the fruits. Eventually, he hopes to be open year-round by setting up a shed to sell fresh produce, jams, honey, and salsa. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
Coming up, a fatal crash in Houston, Texas. 2 people dead and no one in the driver's seat. And a new milestone for space exploration. NASA reports victory for its robot helicopter on Mars. That and more after the short break.
Hey everyone, today's an exciting day. I'm joined by my old friend, Mr. Ellis Williams, AKA Mr. Biggs, one of the founding fathers of hip hop from the mighty Soul Sonic Force, who, by the way, happened to be a CarShield customer, and I had no idea.
When I saw you representing CarShield, I knew CarShield was the real deal. You've always been official.
You called me and you told me, you said, man, I got CarShield, and it worked. What made you get it?
You know, I was actually watching a football game at the time. CarShield commercial came on. I was like, you know what? I have this old SUV, and I know the manufacturer warranty is about to run out. I don't want to get stuck with expensive car repairs.
Right.
So I gave CarShield a call. Coverage was very affordable, and there was no long-term contract. A few months after that, transmission went on my car. I took it to my mechanic. Mechanic knew of CarShield. They called CarShield and saved my family and I $2,400.
CarShield is America's #1 auto protection company. Their administrators have paid out over $1 billion in claims and cover most vehicles from 5,000 to 150,000 miles.
When I bought my used car, I didn't expect any problems right away. But when it broke down, I'm glad I had CarShield.
CarShield saved me over $4,000 and followed through with their commitment. Thank you, CarShield.
I've been a CarShield customer for close to 7 years, had 3 vehicles covered, and they saved me close to $9,000.
With coverage through CarShield's administrators, you'll receive 24/7 roadside assistance, courtesy towing, rental reimbursement at no additional charge. Plus, with CarShield's nationwide coverage network, you can choose the mechanic or dealership of your choice no matter where you are.
If you're driving without a warranty, you have to call CarShield.
Yeah, you do. Give CarShield a call today before it's too late. Remember,
CarShield cars go farther.
Protect yourself now against expensive auto repair bills. Call CarShield for a free and instant protection plan quote. Once your car breaks down, it's too late. Call 800-545-5325. That's 800-545-5325.
Two men died after a Tesla vehicle crashed into a tree on Saturday night north of Houston. Authorities say they believe it was operating without a driver. Gloria Tso reports.
Houston police say a deadly car crash involving a Tesla vehicle was believed to have been operating without a driver at the time of the incident on Saturday. The crash comes amid growing scrutiny over Tesla's semi-automated driving system following several recent accidents. According to local media reports, the 2019 Tesla Model S was moving at a high rate of speed when it failed to round a curve, speeding off the roadway, crashing into a tree, and bursting into flames. Authorities say there was no one in the driver's seat. After the fire was extinguished, authorities found one occupant in the front passenger seat and one in the back. Tesla and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The U.S. Auto Safety Agency said in March it's opened over 24 investigations into crashes of Tesla vehicles, at least 3 of them recent. The latest accident could throw a wrench in Tesla's plans as it prepares to launch its updated full self-driving software to more customers. In January, Tesla CEO Elon Musk said that he expects huge profits from the software, saying he was, quote, highly confident the car will be able to drive itself this year.
Tesla's share slid 3.4% today. The stock was the biggest drag on the S&P 500 and NASDAQ Composite Index. An 8.4% drop over the weekend in Bitcoin, in which Tesla has an investment, also weighed on Tesla's share price. And Parler is returning to the Apple App Store. The social media site is popular among conservatives and bills itself as a haven for free speech. But it was kicked off major tech platforms in January after the Capitol breach. In a letter to Congress, Apple says Parler has proposed changes to better detect and moderate hate speech and incitement. Apple says the updated app should be available immediately after Parler releases it. And NASA's miniature robot helicopter Ingenuity had a successful takeoff and landing on Mars. It's the first time humans have controlled an aircraft on another planet.
Altimeter data confirms that Ingenuity has performed its first flight.
Cheering at NASA on Monday as its little drone helicopter on Mars made a historic flight, marking the first time that humans have controlled an aircraft on an alien planet, and beaming back a single image. Taryn Bailey, an engineer on the project, streamed it live from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory headquarters in California. The helicopter, called Ingenuity, didn't fly for long. This was just a test flight. A camera on the Mars rover Perseverance, which was parked about 200 feet away, caught part of it on video. It went up 10 feet, hovered for 39 seconds, and landed again. But make no mistake, this is being compared to the Wright brothers' first flight back in 1903, which itself only lasted 12 seconds. In fact, NASA attached a tiny piece of the original Wright brothers flyer to the underside of Ingenuity before it was launched to Mars. A piece of history making history again.
A cherry blossom display in the Windy City is charming spring visitors. Our reporters went out to see what people had to say about Chicago's flower display.
Cherry blossoms fill the air in Chicago's Jackson Park. The flowers bring thousands of visitors in their first week of bloom.
This is, oh my God, it's fabulous. The blooms are beautiful. The sky is a great day. It's just perfect. It's not hot. It's really awesome, you know?
Charles Marsala originally didn't come for the flowers, but was enthralled by their beauty.
I was actually looking for something from the 1893 exposition, which is that building. And when I got here, I saw the blossoms, and there's so many people enjoying it and taking photographs. It's like Washington, D.C.
With his experience on travel, Marsala has high recommendations for the flower display.
I would just say that you have to come see this part of Chicago. I mean, you know, you get out of downtown and come down to Jackson Park, which is what I was looking for. And what a surprise.
The blossoms are enough to earn the praise of other world travelers.
The beauty of the cherry blossoms is such that, you know, it's gorgeous anywhere it is, and it makes any setting the most beautiful place to be.
The cherry blossoms last at most 2 weeks. Surabhi Kumar recommends people come to see them while they can.
Please do come and see this. These trees are young, they will grow, they will, you know, they bloom every year. And it's really a blessing to be able to have access to such beauty.
She says the flowers take her back home, but not to India.
I love them. It's to me it signifies the beginning of a new season. It's just like new beginnings for me. So I feel very nostalgic. It reminds me of my home in Japan.
In 2013, 160 cherry trees were planted in Chicago's Jackson Park in partnership with the Japanese Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Chicago. According to Jackson Park Advisory Council head Louise McCurry, over 7,000 people have come to see the cherry blossoms in the past week. Daniel Hall and Sherry Ning, NTD News, Chicago.
Coming up, Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. is shifting its focus to China. That's as it pulls U.S. troops out of Afghanistan. And a team of mostly Chinese scientists have created the first ever human-monkey embryo. They tried to create monkeys engineered with human-like body parts, but the experiment failed. That and more here on NTD News. The U.S. is redirecting military focus and resources from Afghanistan to China as it prepares to pull U.S. troops from the region. Secretary of State Antony Blinken defends the decision, saying that the terrorism threat has moved to other places. NTD's Don Ma has more.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. is shifting focus from Afghanistan to China. He responded to comments this weekend about President Biden's decision to remove troops from Afghanistan. On Sunday, he told ABC's This Week that Afghanistan is not as big a threat anymore and that it's time for the U.S. to redirect resources elsewhere.
The terrorism threat has moved to other places, and we have other very important items on our agenda, including the relationship with China, including dealing with everything from climate change.
But China's foreign ministry wasn't pleased with the statement. Responding to U.S. comments linking the removal to China, a spokesman called the message detrimental to trust and cooperation between the U.S. and China. Last Wednesday, Biden announced that all U.S. troops will be pulled out of Afghanistan by September 11th. He says that it's time to end the forever war. September 11th marks 20 years since the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda attacked the United States. 9/11 was a major factor behind sending U.S. troops to Afghanistan 2 decades ago. The move to withdraw U.S. troops has raised concerns that terrorist groups could once again expand in Afghanistan. In the interview, Blinken offered reassurance that things have changed in Afghanistan. He added that the U.S. will continue to monitor the situation and will provide support if needed. Mirroring Biden's announcement, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, known as NATO, agreed to withdraw troops as well. Around 7,000 troops from mainly NATO countries will also leave Afghanistan by September 11th. Don Ma, NTD News.
The U.S., Japan, and Australia are planning to lay new undersea cables in the Pacific Ocean. This will allow the three countries to share information more efficiently and help them counter Beijing. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
The U.S., Japan, and Australia are joining forces on a new major project. The nations plan to lay new submarine cables in the Pacific Ocean, according to Japanese media Yomiuri News. The move seems to strengthen global digital infrastructure and will allow the three countries to share information more efficiently. The increased communication will likely help the allies combat Beijing. Currently, 90% of submarine cables are owned by entities based in the U.S., Japan, and Europe. But China's submarine manufacturer HMN Tech comes in at number 4 in the world. The company is owned by controversial telecom giant Huawei. Huawei's ties to the Chinese regime have prompted concerns about using HMN Tech gear. Some warn that information transmitted via the Chinese-owned lines may be intercepted or obscured. Officials from the U.S., Japan, and Australia met with related companies in March to discuss the project. All parties agreed to strengthen cooperation. They also put forward a plan to co-finance construction of the submarine cables in areas of strategic importance. Expanding these cable lines is also part of the Chinese regime's Belt and Road Initiative, especially around the Pacific Islands. The area is known to have friendly relations with Taiwan. The Belt and Road is Beijing's main infrastructure project, known for partnering with foreign countries and funding overseas construction projects. Critics say the program aims to spread Beijing's influence by trapping developing countries in debt. Much of the submarine expansion effort is carried out by Chinese companies, not central authorities. Many believe the regime hands out subsidies to domestic companies, allowing them to take bids at lower prices and unfairly compete with foreign competitors. Chinese and U.S. researchers recently created the first human monkey embryo in the world, but the experiment has also raised some ethical concerns. Over 20 scientists took part in the experiment. 17 of them work at China's Kunming University of Science and Technology. The other 3 are from the U.S. and Spain. The lead scientist, Hao Tang, reportedly said they did the experiment in China. That's because monkey embryos are expensive and rare, but they could be found in China. And such experiments can't be funded with U.S. federal research dollars. The team put human stem cells into monkey embryos. Their plan was to create monkeys born with human-like body parts. Data shows thousands of U.S. patients die each year while waiting for organ transplants. These scientists believe if the experiment succeeds, those patients might be able to survive. But the experiment failed. Most of the embryos died shortly afterwards, and the rest were destroyed within 3 weeks. The experiment has raised difficult ethical questions. U.S. media NPR says the biggest concern is that someone can make a baby out of an embryo made this way. Some critics worry that human cells can become part of the brain of the resulting animal. Rice University's Kirsten Matthews says it is difficult to regulate the new creature once it's born. Should it be treated as a human or an animal? Another concern is that using human cells this way could potentially produce animals with human sperm or eggs. Stanford University's bioethicist Hank Greeley says nobody wants monkeys walking around with human eggs or sperm inside of them.
Coming up, 12 of Europe's top soccer clubs are joining forces to make their own Super League. They face backlash with players even possibly barred from the World Cup. And we take you to the small town in England that's famous for its tulips. At its annual Tulip Festival, you can see over 80 different varieties. Stay tuned for more here on NTD News.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical. So I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies, or call 1-800-509-8500. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
Soccer authorities, fans, and political leaders are condemning the move on Sunday by 12 of Europe's top soccer clubs to launch a breakaway Super League. It's set to rival the Union of European Football's established Champions League competition. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings us the details.
Manchester United, Real Madrid, Juventus and Chelsea are among the 12 founding clubs of the Football Super League. But UEFA are threatening to ban them from playing in any other competition at domestic, European or world level, and have vowed to fight the move. The clubs involved in a statement say the global pandemic has accelerated the instability in the existing European football economic model, and there is a need to provide higher quality matches and additional financial resources for the overall football pyramid. Soccer authorities, fan organisations and politicians across Europe have heavily criticised the breakaway. European soccer's governing body UEFA holding a crisis meeting on Monday. In a statement it says it would consider all measures available to us at all levels, both judicial and sporting, in order to prevent this happening, and that it will ban participating clubs from domestic, European and international competition. In response, the Super League club says they would take legal steps in unnamed courts to protect their interests as they set up the league. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is not a fan of the new league.
We're going to look at everything that we can do with the football authorities to make sure that this doesn't go ahead in the way that it's currently being proposed. I don't think that it is good news for fans. I don't think it's good news for football in this country.
The chief executive of Football Supporters Europe says they were expecting this, but couldn't predict the scope of it.
I think it is more despicable. It is more of a greedy power grab than we ever expected. And they claim that they do it in the interest of football. They claim that they do it in the interest of everyone. They even claim that this is a response to the challenges of the pandemic. What they only really do is endanger the economic model of football and put every single club in Europe in danger.
Soccer's world governing body FIFA had warned in January that it would not recognise a breakaway league and that it would ban players who took part in it from featuring in the World Cup. However, on Sunday it seemed to have lowered its tone to mere disapproval of a closed European breakaway league and with no mention of sanctions. For the moment, fans are not in favour.
When you take a league and you make it a bit of a closed shop, it's just completely unfair. It defeats the point of competitive football. It's like the idea that you make the Premier League a kind of American-style league where there's no relegation, there's no promotion. It's just ridiculous. I don't think European clubs who have history in Europe should be able to rest on that history going forwards.
There is obviously a big financial issue surrounding this.
Businesses have involved themselves in football much more frequently, and we've seen the increase of the size of the Premier League and of European competition. With that, we've seen bigger commercial deals, some sponsorship endorsements, players, of course, getting paid so much more money. And that naturally makes it a more attractive competition to invest in.
JP Morgan on Monday said that it was providing the financing. The founding clubs will be given €3.5 billion to, quote, support their infrastructure investment plans and to offset the impact of the COVID pandemic. The Super League announcement comes as UEFA on Monday approves reforms to expand the Champions League to 36 teams instead of the current 32 and to introduce a league instead of groups. It's a move which had received criticism from some fans prior to its approval. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Stamford Bridge Football Ground, London.
The lockdown hit small businesses hard, with many people losing their jobs. But in spite of this, some people took the step to launch new business ventures. NTD's Jane Werrell met with a woman who opened her shop on a London high street during lockdown.
I had a lot of people stopping and saying, wow, you're very brave, or
congratulating me on doing it at such a strange time.
Chrissy Ryan opened her bookshop on the high street during lockdown, selling books through the entrance before people were allowed to come in.
It was on the 1st of February that I thought, we have books, we have people who want to buy books, and they can't come in, but let's put the shutters up and get the community excited. And the response was amazing. Our social media following just quadrupled overnight. I mean, we have people come already from different parts of London and people saying they're going to come from Newcastle when they can.
This business had always been a dream, as she rediscovered during lockdown 1.
Over the first lockdown, I came across my old childhood diaries, and it's quite funny now reading them back, because when I'm about 13, I'm kind of dreaming of having my own bookshop. So it's quite funny now looking back and going, well, here I am.
Working in a bookshop and in publishing after graduating gave Chrissy the experience to make it a reality. She had the idea to create a wine bar and social space in a bookshop, and originally planned to open before lockdown 3.
The way that I've had to view it is that it's given me this very soft launch, and I probably would have had a huge launch and a big party and, and really, really gone for it with lots of events and all that kind of thing. But it's actually meant that I've had to focus on what are the things that are going to build our audience rather than kind of all the bells and whistles. It's made me create something that I think and hope will be long lasting.
Months of restrictions means there's demand to go shopping in person again now lockdown has eased.
It's been really fun watching her do her business during lockdown and being able to still sell the books, but it's great to actually see it in person.
After a year of kind of lack of connection, hopefully this is a space that brings people together and creates that connection through books.
On day 4 of opening to customers here in Islington, North London, her focus is on connecting with both the local and international community, who share a love of socialising and reading. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
Communities across Great Britain are thinking up more and more creative ways to reuse their old red phone booths. One was turned into a cafe. Here are a couple of other ways.
Here on the Yorkshire coast in Scarborough, the local Maritime Heritage Centre is renting a red phone booth. They've turned it into a miniature of their larger museum, featuring only the biggest highlights.
In 1993, the Holbeck Hotel fell into the sea.
The larger museum is closed due to COVID, but the history box is still open. Beryl Henbest takes good care of her library phone box, keeping it looking tidy and making sure it's well stocked. She says she hopes people enjoy it.
I know lots of people these days don't read books proper, it's all computerised and what have you, but I hope that it has been of some benefit to people.
This phone booth might save your life. The machine issues instructions that can talk almost anyone through how to use the defibrillator to help someone having a heart attack. There are 4,000 red phone booths up for adoption, waiting to see what people will make of them.
Did you know a district in England is called South Holland? And just like Holland, a town in the district is famous for tulips and was once home to the UK's tulip industry. The small market town of Spalding is holding its annual Festival of Tulips.
With colourful tulips bathing in the sun, the small market town of Spalding on the South Holland district is holding an annual festival of this well-known spring flowering bulb. At Springfield Festival Gardens, you can see over 80,000 tulips of 80 different varieties, including fringe tulips.
And these are relatively new introductions into the bulb world. There's more and more of these becoming available. It's one of these bulbs that people either really, really like or loathe. Some traditionalists don't like it at all.
Spalding was once home to the UK's tulip industry. It still bears a red tulip in the town sign. It used to host one of the biggest flower festivals in Britain, the Flower Parade at Spalding, with its magnificent floats in all colours of the rainbow. But as the industry became increasingly mechanised, Spalding's bulb industry declined.
Years ago, people used to travel to come and see the tulips in the fields. Unfortunately, that no longer happens. We don't have the tulips in the fields as we did before.
The festival is running low-key this year to avoid attracting large crowds, as the UK begins to ease lockdown restrictions. But on a sunny morning, locals are taking advantage of the opportunity to get out of their houses and enjoy the colourful displays.
And it's been really good to see everything, and everything's so pretty. And it really makes it feel like spring, and it makes it feel not only the flowers are opening up, but hopefully the country's opening up. And it's been really gorgeous to come here.
Springfield's Festival Gardens has been open since 1966. They're free to enter and are open all year. The gardens are maintained by charity Springfield's Horticultural Society.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.